Good evening, councillors and members of the public. Welcome to the first meeting of Eastern Area Planning Committee for the new council year. I'd like to draw your attention to the evacuation procedures behind me in the event of the fire alarm going off this evening. We're not anticipating a test alarm, so if you do hear the alarm sounding, please exit by the nearest evacuation route, and we meet under the canopy of Waitrose. Can I remind you that we are being webcast this evening, so please ensure that your card is pushed right into the console till you can feel it click in, and that means that you'll be identified on the webcast if you speak. Please, if you do speak, make sure that you use your microphone. First item on the agenda is the appointment of the chairman. Is the committee happy to confirm the appointment of Councillor Jenny Else as chairman of the Eastern Area Planning Committee for the 2015-16 council year? Thank you. Councillor Else would like to come up and take the chair and continue with the agenda.
Good evening, councillors and member of the public. Item 2 on the agenda is confirmation of the appointment of Councillor Brian Ellis as Vice Chairman of the committee. Is that agreed? Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Now moving on to this evening's business, the minutes of the meeting, which took place on the 22nd of April, have been laid on the table for the last 30 minutes. Are you content that I sign these as a correct record? Thank you. Thank you. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies?
No apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. And have any members declared interest before the meeting?
None declared before the meeting.
Good. Do members have any other non-pecuniary or disclosable pecuniary interests to declare? Councillor Byam.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't write in on this, but Richard Seaborn and myself, but on the item application 1 on the agenda, the green sand for the lighting, both Councillor Seaborn and myself visited both the people who are objecting to the application and the applicant on a very brief visit on both occasions, just to get a feel for ourselves the lie of the land. I didn't feel that it was necessary to call a site visit, although at some other stage in the evening somebody else might wish to do that, but we did visit there. So no pecuniary interest at all, but we did visit.
Are there any relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since the last meeting?
There's nothing in relation to the items on this agenda. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Beth, could we ask you please to introduce the report for enforcement report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This report is to provide members with an update on the planning enforcement performance for the quarter January to March. The report is for noting, but I will just give you a quick update on a site-specific matter on page 8, the matter of downside. This is a good news story. We have, after 7 years of hard work on this matter, we've finally secured compliance, and as such, it will be removed from the next round of quarterly updates. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, so applications for planning permission.
Sorry, Chairman.
Sorry.
I wonder before we rush off to the applications, whether I might raise a question on that. And specifically, given that the site adjacent to L'Oreal House in Knoll Lane has been on our radar since March last year, I believe, and increased activity has taken place since March the 16th this year, I'm puzzled that there's nothing in the enforcement report now. I would appreciate a comment on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the reason that there's nothing on this is because this agenda was the report was compiled way before any infringement took place. So it's for the last financial quarter. I can assure you it will appear in the following round. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. In my haste to get through the meeting, I'm missing things. I do apologise. Yes, Councillor Goodrich.
Can I congratulate the officers for the statistics on the bottom of page 11, where it seems January to March 15, we've risen to the dizzy heights of 93% of actioned within 12 weeks, which I think is highly commendable and didn't want it to pass without mention.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or observations? So the recommendation is set out on the first page of the agenda that the enforcement report be noted. Is that agreed? Thank you. No one's called for a visit to any of the application sites in advance of the meeting, but in the event of site inspections being necessary, as a result of our consideration of the applications at this meeting, these will be held on Monday the 13th of July 2015 at a time to be agreed. So we now move on to the planning applications, and the first one is item B1, WA 20150510, pages 15 to 28. Linda, would you like, Barry, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm playing Linda this evening. So this application is for the installation of flood lighting to a tennis court. This application is retrospective in nature as the floodlights have already been installed. So there we have a location plan aerial photograph in front of us showing the site. This is the tennis court in question. It's clear on the board. So the application site is on the southern side of Primrose Way, which is in turn accessed from Munstead Heath Road in Bramley. As you can see, the immediate environment is of a Sylvanian quality, and it is in the area of outstanding natural beauty and greenbelt. Here we have a block plan showing the tennis court, which, as I said, is a lawful tennis court with the six metre high columns around. Here we have a 3D image of the tennis court and its lights as it looks. Here we have a photograph taken from the neighbouring property showing the floodlights in location. As I said, there are 6 of them, which you can see on screen now. And here we have a photograph taken from the bridleway. If I take you to the determining issues, those on the left be matters of principle and technical opinion, and those on the right be matters of judgment. With regards to the effect on the greenbelt, members will be cognizant of paragraph 89 of the framework that would advise that these type of facilities in the greenbelt are not inappropriate development if they serve for outdoor sport and recreation, which this does. So from a greenbelt point of view, it's not inappropriate development. Now taking you on to the right-hand side of the screen, matters of judgment, looking at design and impact on visual amenity and the AONB. Members will be aware of the requirements with regards to the AONB that's under the Countryside Rights of Way Act to ensure that any development is designed so as to preserve and enhance the natural beauty of the AONB. Officers think that this would not achieve those aims. It would be an incongruous feature, certainly in the evenings at times when the lights are turned on. It would create a rather, as I said, incongruous feature. Mindful of paragraph 125 of the framework, where we're told that we should be respecting intrinsically dark skies. Certainly in the AONB, again, this would not serve that purpose of seeking to preserve those intrinsically dark skies around the AONB. Looking at impact on residential amenity, officers do not consider that this application or the proposal would cause harm to residential amenity, given that the lighting levels are relatively low. They would have the appearance of moonlight, although it would be focused in an area, and conditions could be imposed to limit time and to limit angle so as not to shine into people's windows. So officers consider there's no impact on residential amenity, but we do consider that it does have that impact on the AONB and AGLV. If I now take you to the update sheet, which there isn't one, so I can't take you to the update sheet. But then if I take you to the recommendation on page 26, the recommendation is that permission be refused for the following reason. The site lies within the Surrey Hills area of outstanding natural beauty, within which the area's distinctive landscape character and natural beauty is to be conserved and enhanced. The proposal is inconsistent with this aim and conflicts with the national, strategic and local policy guidance and advice set out in Policy C3 of the Waverley Borough Local Plan 2002. The proposal is also contrary to national planning policy set out at paragraphs 115 and 125 of the NPPF and the Surrey Hills AONB Management Plan, Policy LU2. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. And over to you, members. Councillor Byam.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, myself and previous Councillor Gates, decided that we ought to bring this to committee, so it's our fault that it's here with you today. We decided because of the approaches made, first of all, by the applicant, who obviously had come into a situation where he strenuously states that he didn't realise and was presumably poorly advised by the lighting contractor that he didn't need planning permission and therefore subsequently had to apply for planning permission retrospectively. And of course the neighbours who, and there are a number of neighbours who have made representations to us with regard to the development and not wishing it to be allowed to be left there. And as I said earlier on, that Richard Seaborn and myself decided that it would be worthwhile visiting the site to look at both from the applicant side and the other side. And it puts me personally in quite a dilemma, because the lighting map that you see, or whatever you call it, the footprint that is shown on page 23, and the amount of light that is going to be emanated into the area, seems relatively benign. But nobody's had a chance to look at it anyway, because having fitted the lights, I don't believe that they've been on for more than a test period, and then subsequently, because the enforcement team approached the householder, he didn't do anything more, so it hasn't been touched, as I understand, since then. And so we've had no chance at all to see, in effect, how much harm this is doing and how much effect it has on the neighbour. It's clear from the photographs that you've shown there that the neighbour will see the columns. They are 13 or 15 metres from the boundary fence. A beech hedge, which will therefore be will never have no leaf cover. It's a substantial tall fence, but of course the tops of the poles sit over the top of that, or show over the top of that. And I have a great problem as to which way to go. The family have obviously a strong wish, and they've spent a lot of money at it, but that's an irrelevant point. And I'm interested to hear what other members feel about this, because we've got the mixture of a relatively low period of time, which we would, if we were minded to approve, we would put conditions on, say of 2 or 3 hours a night during specific months of the year when there was low light and therefore a need for them, and the harm that would do, and how much it would affect the neighbours. So all of these things, of course, anything like this brings angst to neighbours who object and are worried about the effect. I'm not clear in my mind, and therefore I look forward to hearing comments whatever comes from councillors as to what they feel, and I will reserve judgment from then.
Oh, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure I'm actually going to be of very much comfort to my colleague here, because I'm afraid, yo-yoed backwards and forwards as well between thinking that it's okay and then thinking that I would go with the officer's recommendation. I mean, there are quite a number of issues to be considered here. I think, and I suspect other colleagues here have also received a couple of emails from an agent and also from an objector. So I have to be honest that I have looked at both of these. And I did look initially and think that the officers said they would not materially impact on the amenity of the neighbouring occupiers. And I was fairly comfortable that there was significant screening, but that photograph indicates actually that the screening still allows the columns to be seen, and the lights, when they're on, will be seen as well. I'm minded to think as well that although this is in the area of outstanding natural beauty, that actually it is in a fairly residential area, so that there will be some light pollution in any case from other people's security lights or garden lights, whatever, and I've taken that into account. I do believe that it will actually set a bit of a precedent. I know we're always told that there's no precedent in planning, but actually I suspect if somebody next door but one wants to put up lighting around a tennis court and this had received permission, then they would actually be quoting it. So I'm sorry to say that actually I'm still quite undecided, but I did note that Bramley Parish Council does not object, but expressed some reservations with regard to the retrospective nature of the application. I did read in one of the emails that an offer was made that the floodlights would only be turned on between the months of October to March, between 0800 and 2000 hours, for no more than 2 hours in any 24-hour period. And I feel that should permission be granted, and I'm still open to listening to the debate, then I would really want something like that to be a condition of approval. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Band.
Thank you. Well, I think Councillor Brown's put his finger on the problem. It's almost impossible for us at this time of year to assess what impact this is actually going to have on the neighbours. And I think that's where I'm coming from. If I'm not able to make a judgment, I feel I really have got to go with the officer's recommendation. I think I've got no elsewhere to go. It's a shame we aren't, in some respects, looking at this in the winter period, where we could actually go and take a sensible view and see what impact this actually had on the neighbouring vicinity. But we aren't. And there just isn't sufficient evidence here for me to convince me that there is not going to be unacceptable impact to the neighbours. So on that basis, my inclination is to go with the officer's recommendation. A bit reluctantly, I think, because I think, this could be produced in a way which could be acceptable, but I don't think we have got the evidence to demonstrate it is.
Thank you. Councillor Stennett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Two things. When you showed the aerial photograph, can we go back to that? Well, that one there. Is that, do I see two other tennis courts, or even three in that aerial photograph there? Four in total. Have any of those tennis courts got lights? Because I'm fully aware of setting a presence would those then all put lights up? I don't know. But have any of them got lights? Do we know that?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I believe one of them has lights, but not through the benefit of planning permission. They've gone up and then have escaped over a period of time. So they are up unauthorised. The rest do not have lights on. So, of course, I'm going to tell you that we don't set a precedent in planning, but if one were to get lights, it would then be jolly difficult to say the neighbours can't have lights. So you could be in a situation where in the AONB you have 4 tennis courts in close proximity, all with lights. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, can I come back on that? Or? Yeah, thank you. That worries me, I've got to say, because you could have a real light pollution then. Listen to what my colleague Councillor Vander said. Is it possible to delay this for, say, till the end of next winter, just to see what we could we do that, or is that possible or not?
I would recommend that we make a decision, and of course if the applicant wants to come back with any extra evidence to demonstrate that it's not going to have any impact, they can reapply and provide extra evidence. But my recommendation would be to decide or determine the application as presented.
Councillor Goodrich.
Sorry, thank you.
Madam Chairman, I on balance, I agree with the officer's recommendation. As I understand it, the tennis court that is currently lit, if one looks in the middle of page 20, is external lighting to the front of the site and bulkhead lights to the adjacent tennis court. And I think that bulkhead lights seem to me to be not lights on great big stalks, but lights that are coming from a sort of head height or that sort of thing, which seems to me is a rather different situation than what we have now. And I think if one is worried about the area of outstanding beauty and the light pollution, I would certainly err on safety, so to speak, and feel that it would be wrong to grant permission in the hope that it won't adversely affect. As has already been said, there's no precedent in planning, but I think somewhere I read in the report, and I've been trying to find it, the officer did say something about there might be a precedent. In other words, you know, there could be a precedent in reality, in that more tennis courts, and there are quite a few in the road, could then find themselves with identical lights, and you put the whole lot together and it becomes Gatwick Airport. So on balance, I'm happy to go along with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Are there any last questions or observations before we move to the recommendation? Yes, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking on page 20 there, it says that low-level usage is only required during the winter months. I wonder really whether or not outdoor tennis during the winter months is appropriate. And looking elsewhere in the agenda on page 19, it says that there are quite a number of public tennis courts in the vicinity anyway. Some of those quite possibly may well be undercover. So I'm minded to go with the officers because I don't think really that these floodlights are actually necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation is then that permission be refused for the reasons set out on page 26 of the agenda. May I have those in favour of the recommendation to refuse permission?
(11) in favour of refusal, and is that 2 abstentions? Or?
Thank you, members. Permission is refused. Moving on to the next application, item B2, WA 2014-2292, for change of use of ground floor office and storage area for attached garage into a flat and division of existing flat to form 2 flats. It follows an invalid application, WA 2013-2146. at MacLeod Garage, The Common, Cranley, GU6 8RZ, as amplified by information on flooding issues received on the 13th of April 2015. Barry, would you introduce... No? Peter. You move very quickly, Barry. Peter, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this application seeks permission for the conversion of existing ancillary office and storage space associated with the garage on site, and the conversion of the existing self-contained flat at first and second floor level into 2 flats as well. The site comprises existing garage premises with residential at first and second floor. It's located to the south of the Common in Cranley. A couple of photos here. This shows the front of the site from the public highway. The buildings directly front the highway. There's no dedicated footpath to the front. And this is the side elevation of the building. This shows, sorry, this is the mouse, the existing dormers and the residential use at first floor level. The entrance into the garage, and there's a car showroom behind this glazed roof structure, and the service bay to the rear and workshop. This is existing ground floor plan. So the top, sorry, it's slightly blurred, but that says office, and that's part of the building to be converted, as well as this storage area here. It also shows the car showroom, which is to be retained, and the existing workshop and associated access here, which is also retained. This is the existing first floor plan showing the residential flat. It's across 2 stories. There's a living room and kitchen here, and within the roof space, an existing bedroom. So this is the proposed site layout or block plan for the site. This identifies allocated parking for the 3 flats that would be created. That provides 3 spaces, which is sufficient to meet our guidelines in terms of parking provision for 1-bedroom properties. This is the proposed ground floor plan. You'll see the retained car showroom and workshop, and this is the new 1-bedroom bedsit accommodation proposed. The internal area does fall below national recommended guidelines, but it only falls just below that, and given the offer of accommodation, we don't feel that it would result in significant harm to any future amenity given its size and the proximity of the large common in close proximity. This is a proposed first floor plan. It's got a 1-bedroom flat, kitchen, open plan living area. And this is the second floor plan showing again a bedsit, a single bedsit type unit in the roof space. These are the elevations. They remain as existing. The existing window here will be the front of the proposed ground floor flat, and at first floor and second floor level remain as existing again. So in terms of matters of principle, the site is within the developed area. Apologies, that's not on the slide in front of you, but the principle of development is considered to be acceptable. Parking provision, we've touched on that. Adequate parking provision is proposed for the residential flats, and also there is sufficient parking area for the existing garage that will be retained, and a parking forecourt which is of sufficient size as well, so there won't be competition for parking, we don't believe. Flood risk, part of the site is within flood zone 2 and 3, but that is the western part of the site. The actual residential use doesn't fall within the flood zone, and there is a flood risk assessment submitted with the application, and that confirms that floor levels provided at ground floor level for the residential use will be above the floodwater level predicted. Bin storage and servicing, this is something that we've secured by condition, but we feel the size of the site, there'd be adequate room to provide an appropriate area to service the 3 flats. So in terms of matters of judgment, this scheme does result in the loss of the office space and storage area associated with the existing garage. Officers have taken a view that whilst they haven't marketed it to any significant extent, that it's only a small loss of area and it doesn't loss any significant amount of employment floor space. So on that basis, we've accepted that loss, and also we don't believe it would impact on the viability of the existing garage and car sales. The second point there is the impact on visual amenity. There's very little change in terms of the appearance of the building. It's largely internal. The change of use is not going to have any impact on the appearance of the area, we don't believe. The impact on residential amenity, it's currently in a location which is, there's a mix of commercial and residential uses that at present work alongside each other, so there wouldn't be a harm in terms of noise or anything along those lines. Just down there, there's the point I touched upon with regards to the housing standards and internal space standards. The first and second floor flats comply with the requirements for one bedroom properties, but the ground floor doesn't. It falls marginally below the requirements, and therefore we don't think it would be significant harm. So on that basis, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions on page 46 and 47 of your agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. And members, your comments or questions, please. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. My initial concerns about this application were really related to the loss of part of an employment site, because I really do believe that in Cranley we're needing more employment sites rather than losing the opportunity for some of them. And I suspect that need will increase. However, we also have a need for residential accommodation. But boy, is that accommodation small. I can't imagine who's going to take advantage of that, but perhaps somebody coming into the village to work in the village might use it. I really don't know. But we do have a need for accommodation, and although I note that the applicant hasn't marketed this, and I do hear what the officer is saying, I think that I would support their recommendation. But if I could just ask one question, and that relates to the potential for this land or this site to be contaminated. Has that been taken into account? Because I didn't really feel that there was very much in the officer's report that otherwise was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, in terms of that, we haven't got specific comments from Environmental Health Officer, but it's a conversion of an existing office and storage space. Whilst it is associated with the workshop, having visited it, it is much of a the internal space has been used as an office, so there's very little risk of within that part of the building to be any contamination. And plus, there's no breaking into ground. There's no sort of heavy construction work that's likely to uncover any contamination. So we're content on that basis.
Councillor Forachevsky.
Madam Chairman, I do feel as though I'm doing you a big favour by allowing you this opportunity to pronounce my name and not have to worry about it in the future. So I felt obliged to speak, so you've got that out the way now, but very well pronounced, thank you. I take on board... Mary's quite simple, it's Forashevsky that's difficult. I take on board exactly what Councillor Ellis has just said. But looking at the space that's being lost, from what I understand, it's not a requirement of the garage to actually have that space. It could be used for something alternative. So yes, we are losing the office space, but it's been created by the garage owners to do as they see fit. And again, I noticed the parish council had no objections to this. So I welcome the officer's report. I think it's very comprehensive, and it's nice to see that we'll have an opportunity for smaller, affordable accommodation within this area. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Members. Councillor Byam.
I'm more concerned about the parking and the availability of parking land for the garage. The garage is working there, and presumably the 3 spaces that are being put aside for residential parking have been and are being used by the garage in its operation. And having seen garages in a range of, in Bramley we've got a major problem with a garage where they're parking anywhere and everywhere throughout the village and creating problems is one thing. And the garage that I go to, which is an industrial site, there seems to be a jam of, of vehicles toing and froing and trying to get in. So I don't know the level of activity at this garage, but that is a level of concern that I would have, and whether it creates problems elsewhere in the area because of parked vehicles being moved outside of the locality of the garage itself, or indeed using these designated spots for their use, and the occupier coming back and finding he's got nowhere to park.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just come back on that point on the car parking. I mean, they have identified them specifically for those flats, and they haven't specifically provided details of how they would control that. But there is quite a large forecourt to the rear, which, I mean, this photograph partly shows it, but what it doesn't show is to the right-hand side of the screen is an area where at least 10 or 12 cars are parked, which are for sale. So there is a large area that would be available to the garaging, so we feel that that's acceptable. The county highway officers have looked at it as well, and they've raised no objection on sort of safety grounds or impact on from parking elsewhere. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, if I may just come in and start by apologising and take total blame for the contaminated land issue which has been brought to our attention. Page 35 of the report does indicate that the site could be potentially contaminated, and there should be conditions on. So I take the blame for them not being there. So no, I apologise, and they shall, if you are to permit, with your indulgence, be added. Thank you.
Councillor Stennett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to confirm, I know there is worry about parking, but I can assure you that there is plenty of room there on that forecourt. You can actually park one of my big lorries along there and load it, and all the traffic still goes by it. So it's just a matter of being helpful, really, and common sense. So there is no problem about parking. Thank you.
Are there any last... Councillor... Is it, please excuse me, Denis or Danis? Denis, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My only question is the proposed ground floor plan, which I think has been described as small in size, and it says it falls below the standard, the normal size. And I wondered how much it falls behind the standard, because once you start to move the line, it then starts to get blurred in other occasions. So how much does it fall below? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I should have brought that out to your attention. What's proposed, the ground floor area, or the floor area for the ground floor premises, is 33.3 square metres. The national standard or guideline suggests 39 square metres would be appropriate for a one-bedroom flat.
Chairman, if I could just add to that, we are clearly aware of the government's guidance, and we've started to report that to you in our reports because it was published earlier this year. But it's important to bear in mind that the government is recommending that full weight be attached to the standards only when they form part of a local plan policy. So they are a material consideration, and they are here to allow planning authorities to inform their judgment about whether it is a reasonable standard of accommodation. But I think it would be unwise to place too much emphasis on them in terms of a strict black and white compliance situation, because at present we haven't adopted them as part of a local plan policy. So therefore they are just guidance at this stage. And it's actually unlikely that if you were to reject the application strictly on that basis, I don't think at this stage an inspector would agree with the decision. You can come to a conclusion that you think outside of the guidance, or informed by the guidance, that you think it's a substandard form of accommodation.
and that is a judgment, but just to relate it directly to the guidance would be inadvisable at this stage for the reasons that I've given. Thank you, Chairman.
Any more comments, members? So, yes, Councillor Stennett.
Just one thing. I think my colleague here thought that this hadn't been advertised, but every time I see the picture up there, there is a nice big board which says to let. So it has been advertised as an office for letting. Is there a photograph that we can put back up again? The coloured, no, the other one, that's it. There's an office to let. And also on the side there, we can see just to the right, but does that say to let as well?
Thank you.
That's just MOTs, but there's definitely an office to let in the front. And knowing the area, you can actually see that as you go up and down the high street. Sorry, Patricia.
Would you like to
switch? It is quite clear.
If you'd like to switch your microphone off, then Peter's going to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it has been marketed to some extent, but we require a significant amount of marketing to demonstrate that there's not a need. So there has been a level of marketing, but it's not sufficient from our point of view to demonstrate that there's not a significant need for that type of premises in that location. Thank you, Chairman.
Any more comments, members? So we need to agree then, I believe, is that right, Fiona, on an extra condition to be added?
I'm afraid I don't have the wording, but it is the standard contaminated land. If you were to find contaminated land, you must stop and then do some studies. It's a standard model condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Are we agreed that that condition should be included, members? The recommendation is that permission be granted subject to conditions 1 to 5 plus an extra condition re the potential contamination set out on pages 46, 47 and the informatives on page 47 of the agenda. May I have those in favour of the recommendation to grant permission, please? Unanimous.
That's unanimous, granting permission.
Thank you, members. Permission is granted, and I think that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.